Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius on a wonderful Thursday, a little bit of a rainy Thursday in Tampa. At least it's rainy where I am, Scott, and not rainy where the Bucs have been, not rainy where where they've been since Tom Brady came back, obviously, and certainly was not rainy in your 7-round Bucs mock draft, the 3.0 version that dropped on Pewter Report this morning, which has
received some defensive players.
Yes, rave reviews and national acclaim.
Okay.
So congratulations, Scott. It's a great start to the mock draft.
Well, we appreciate that. Yeah. And you're correct. This is really the first one that matters because the first two, without knowing all of the holes and how they would be filled in free agency, were kind of like throwing darts on a dartboard. This one, though, is a little bit more pinpoint, and we have two more to go. So maybe some of these guys stick around. Maybe we have some new faces in there. But we have plenty of draft news today, plus answering some of your questions here on the Pewter Report podcast. Voices you hear, myself, Scott Reynolds, John Ledyard from pewterreport.com. Appreciate y'all joining us today. And the cat's out of the bag. We had Lewis Cine as the number one pick for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a player that John and I are very, very high on. And John, let me start by talking about the need, and then you talk about the player. You know, when you look at how the Buccaneers have gone about free agency, filling a lot of those holes, they're still looking for a starting strong safety. And Jordan Whitehead's departure to the Jets, you can look at Mike Edwards and say, okay, well, maybe that's a player that could fill in there. He has some experience playing free safety, playing in the nickel, playing strong safety a little bit, rotating with Jordan Whitehead, even replaced Whitehead for a couple of games when he was out due to injury. But with them not re-signing Andrew Adams, there's really a hole there at the safety spot. So they need at least another body. And why not get a player that can come in and really kind of be that enforcer, be that guy that Jordan Whitehead was, a physical, hard-hitting guy. But the thing that Cine brings, in addition to some real leadership and energy that he had at Georgia when he was the MVP of the national championship game with 7 tackles, a tackle for loss, a pass breakup, you're getting a player that's actually even bigger than Whitehead. Whitehead maybe 5'10", 195 pounds, Cine 6'2", 4 inches taller. He's got longer arms. That helps him out in pass coverage. But a player that is just every bit as physical as Whitehead was.
Yeah, and I think the ability to do different things is so key. Like, that is clearly where the Bucs are going. If there's a reason why, the whole thing, they didn't extend Whitehead an offer, all that kind of stuff. It's not because they disliked everything about Jordan Whitehead. It was time. It was time. Jordan Whitehead wanted to go one direction, and the Bucs wanted another safety. They wanted more versatility at the safety position. Yeah. If that was what we were to assume, and I asked Jason Light and I tried to catch him a little bit, Scott. I asked him at the combine. I said, the fact that Whitehead played a little bit more, he played really good football, at least closer to the line of scrimmage. Is that something that you want to explore, long term? Do you want to look at him in a role like that? And if so, will it impact what you look at in terms of the safety next to him? And Jason gave that smile like he does when you're onto something, but he isn't going to give you a great quote on it, but you're onto something. Right. And so it was enough to make me think, okay, they might not re-sign Whitehead. And I believe I didn't have them re-signing Whitehead in my projections that we did, my predictions for free agency, because it just felt like they were going to go a different way and look at safeties who are more versatile. Then they bring in Logan Ryan, who they, versatility, basically talked about it all day when he met with the media. That's my strong suit. He's played some in the box. He's played a couple seasons of free safety. Hasn't necessarily been great, but has played free safety in a rotation while playing nickel and other things really well. So he has the experience. Again, that's what you're looking for, the experience, communication. He could step in, start a game in any of those spots, and you trust him. And that's kind of what I'm expecting in the draft too. They've seen Winfield's model, and they want to keep getting guys like that. And Cine, man, we watch his game against Alabama in the national championship game. He's in man coverage in the slot against a really good wide receiver room, and he locks it down. There's a couple reps. He's breaking at the top of his route back to the ball, reading the receiver's hips, watching them sink at the top of the route, knowing that they're breaking back to the ball. He's breaking with them and breaking up passes. He might not be a single high, rangy type of player, but that's okay. They've got the single high types. He can play in the box. He's absolutely brutal underneath. He goes and he wrecks things underneath. He's a very physical, violent tackler. He's a great athlete. Yeah. he's a Buck. He really is. He's a
Ran
Buck type of player.
4.37, right? And the Buccaneers like speed. They like speed on defense, and he's another player that adds some speed to it for sure.
Yeah, no
You know,
question about it. I mean,
if
it's a
you
great
look at
fit that way.
if you look at Cine, right? I mean, and all of the Georgia defensive players, and they rotate a lot of guys. But you're talking about Nakobe Dean. You're talking about Quay Walker. You're talking about Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis. I mean, these are guys that are first or second day draft picks, right? And Channing Tindall, a very fast linebacker. And I watched a lot of Georgia games. My wife's from Georgia, so I've been dialed into the Bulldogs for years, mostly watching the running backs. But the defense, certainly the last couple of years, has been top notch. And the thing with Cine is he led the team in tackles. I mean, he was the leading tackler for the Bulldogs. And one of the most impressive statistics that I got from Pro Football Focus about Cine is out of 159 tackle attempts that he made, he missed 11 tackles. Now, it's one thing to miss 11 tackles in a season. And trust me, there are linebackers and safeties that miss far more than 11 tackles in their career, even in a season. But this is a guy that's missed 11 tackles in almost 3 years as a starter. I mean, that's like 3.5 tackles per year he's missing.
Yes.
And for a Bucs defense, John, you and I criticized at times for being sloppy with their tackling and missing some fits in the run game. This is about as sure-handed a tackler as you're going to get in the draft at the safety position.
For sure. And he does need to lower his target area a little bit as a tackler because he's a taller guy.
Just ask Kyle
There's no
Pitts.
question. Yeah, Kyle got blasted. Actually, I love that hit. I didn't think that hit was that bad, but I just kind of always am like, that ain't targeting. That's football. Like,
Right.
yeah, he blasted people. I mean, he wrecked. Was it Brian Robinson for Alabama, the running back?
Him too.
I forget who it was. I mean, he
Blew
just
him up.
planted him so he can wreck people. He does need to get a little more consistent with his technique, but he does usually get people on the ground. And it's another benefit to having long arms. Like Winfield is a very technically sound tackler, but he will go through what he had a game this year where he missed 5 tackles. He just doesn't have a lot of margin for error because his wingspan is so short. And that's one of the benefits of being a bigger, longer, stronger safety is that a lot of time you can misjudge things a little bit, still get the guy on the ground. And he did in college, even when he misjudged things a little bit. So really big benefit that he would bring. I would love this pick, Scott. I mean, there's a number of guys we've talked about now at the end of the first round that could be there. Zion Johnson, Devontae Wyatt, Lewis Cine, the safety from Georgia, at different positions too. Traylon Burks. I know we're going to talk about some wide receivers today on the show.
That's right. Yeah.
These guys, one of these guys is probably going to be there. And I like all of those picks. And the Bucs have really shown some interest in all those guys. I've talked about Boy Mafe. I like him as a pick. You know, these are all guys that could be in that range. And I think the Bucs have shown some interest in all of them.
Yeah, and we reported yesterday in the show. If you missed it, you can always go back and watch our podcasts on YouTube, which is the cool thing, right? If you missed the live show, we're usually at 4:00 every day, Monday through Thursday, live here on pewterreport.com. But if by chance you happen to miss an episode, you can go back. Maybe on your way to work tomorrow morning, right? You can if you miss Thursday's podcast or Wednesdays or Tuesdays, listen to it, right? It's great listening to that on the way to and from work, or maybe during your lunch hour. Make sure you subscribe to our Pewter Report YouTube channel. It's Pewter Report TV, and hit the like button. It helps our algorithm, helps more Buccaneer fans find us. But one of the little scouting tips and tricks that I do, right? Because there's so much involved in scouting, John, as you know. There's the game film, right? That's precedent. Then you're gathering information from an athletic standpoint, pro day times, the combine workouts, etc. The other part of it too is the medical, which is always the big mystery, unless some of the national reporters kind of get that information out there. But there's always like 1 or 2 guys in the draft that keep sliding and falling, and then it's finally reported, okay, well, he was a second round pick. He fell to the 5th because he had really bad medicals at the combine, right? Or maybe it was a player who went undrafted because of medical reasons. So that's always a hard thing. The other part of it is the investigative journalist part. That's where the scouts go to the schools. They talk to not just the head coach or the position coach or the coordinator. They talk to the strength coach. You know, does this guy like to work out? Is he allergic to the weight room? They talk to high school coaches. They do some real investigative reporting, because you're going to pay some guys millions of dollars. You got to find out who that person is. Good general managers, they will draft the player as well as the person. So we don't have access to a lot of information, John. One of the things I do like to do, though, is go on YouTube. I like to listen to players' interviews. It gives you
Sure.
some insight into how intelligent they are, how shy they are, how gregarious they are. Are they going to be a good teammate, right? Are they full of bullshit? Are they serious about their craft or whatever? I'm watching some of Lewis Cine's interviews. I watched the one from the Combine. I've watched one from the Georgia Pro Day. I've watched some after the loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game. And the first thing I thought of is this could be Todd Bowles' son. That's how serious this guy is about football. His demeanor is almost like he's like a younger version of Todd Bowles. And I thought, oh my gosh, like
it's
the
funny.
Bucs
It
have to
was
love
funny.
this guy.
They asked him, like, do you think you did well? And he was like, humbly, I think I did all right. Like, you know, he was like just very polite about it. And
After
it
running
was
the
just very much
4.37,
reminded me of how Bowles would have said it. Like,
yeah,
you know, Bowles would never been like one, I'm best DB in this draft, like period, like draft me. And Cine is like very confident, clearly,
yes,
but doesn't need to, like, no false bravado about him. We are looking at a very clear type. Like the Bucs, it's so clear, Scott. Like for drafts now, look at the last couple drafts. Wirfs, Winfield, especially with premier picks. Wirfs, Winfield, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Kyle Trask. They're looking for guys who are all about football, who are, you know, every time you interview him, you're like, super mature dude, like, you know, really well-spoken dude, like super mature, knows what he wants, gets work ethic, understands it, stays healthy, takes care of their body. Like there's prototypes basically that fall under Bucs players at this point in the draft, looking for those types. And he really aligns himself with that type. Zion Johnson really aligns himself with that type. Some things about Devontae Wyatt maybe align himself with that type. And obviously we're just going off a little bit that we've seen. We'll see about Treylon Burks. Then we'll talk about him later. I'm not totally sure there, but there are some types of players in this draft. You're just like, yeah, that guy's
and John,
like that guy's a Buck fit.
You're right. In the position too, right? Let's not forget in 2017, Jason Light drafted Justin Evans in the second round as a safety. He drafted Antoine Winfield in the second round as a safety. He drafted Mike Edwards in the third round as a safety. It's a very important position.
Whitehead fourth,
Whitehead fourth. It's a very important position in Todd Bowles' defense. Oh, and by the way, Todd Bowles was a safety in the NFL in college, right?
Right.
And it's one of those positions that when you're picking 27th, I mean, it's a second round pick. It just is, right? It's fans were blowing their mind last year. They drafted Kyle Trask in the second. It was literally the last pick in the second round. There are no such thing as 32 first rounders in the draft. There's 32 first round picks, but players that are actually first rounders, there might be a dozen. I think there's probably a dozen this year. In most years, when there's a better first round, it's 18 to 20 guys. Once you get into the mid to late 20s, you're essentially drafting second round talent.
Right. Do want to roll through some questions because we've got a lot of them. We promised kind of a dual thing. We're going to be looking at the mock. We're also going to be getting to some questions. So let's get 5 or 6, 7 questions here, and then we'll get back to some of the thoughts on the mock draft, and we'll talk about some of the wide receivers too that the Bucs have been visiting with. Tony says, what adjustments does this coaching staff need to make to beat the good teams in 2022? Tony, I would like to answer this question schematically, but I want to see what they do in terms of personnel first. To me, that's where the biggest adjustments need to make. Like finding a quality wide receiver 3. They agreed, went out and did it. Getting a better interior rush / better 4-man rush, whatever way that seems that's possible. Can you do that? And they seem like they've identified that at least. We'll see what steps they make towards it. But those are things, solidifying somebody that can play in the nickel. Those were things all I wanted. Those were not things I didn't necessarily know if they would even do. And especially if they draft a safety who can play early on, it will seem like they've done that if they give Ryan the opportunity to do that, to play in that spot. So those are some of the adjustments I think that they've made, but there might be more, and schematically we can talk about it, but I want to see who the personnel is first.
I agree with you
at that point. Being healthy helps too, Scott. Not having a lot of your good players injured for the playoffs against the team that would ultimately
just ask Todd Bowles. He'd like to do more rather than play soft zone coverage. Right.
That's right. Quantum Spin asks, what's the story on Richard Sherman? I think he's probably retiring. He's not going to play in Tampa Bay, I'm sure. Kenneth Walker, Josh wants to know. I have not seen him yet. I haven't watched running backs yet. Scott, you have seen Kenneth Walker. What do you think? He ran really well. I mean, not that is a huge deal for a back, as we talked about yesterday.
I love him as a running back pick. He went from Wake Forest to Michigan State, where he played 1 year and was phenomenal. He is Reminds me a lot as a runner of Javonte Williams from North Carolina. He's just a big, thick guy that will bowl you over. He's got some wiggle. He'll rip and slip and dip tackles. He's a big time breakaway back. I like him. I don't know if it's because he can't catch the ball or because he was not featured as a pass catcher, but very much like Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, got very, very, very few opportunities. I think he had maybe 8 or 10 catches. And so for a Bucs fit, this could be Ronald Jones all over again, where they drafted him with a very small sample size at USC. And listen, catching passes at your pro day is one thing, right? But when you have pads on and a helmet and it's the third quarter and you've got a safety bearing down on you in the flat, can you catch that pass? That's a lot different than running around in shorts and a t-shirt in your air-conditioned dome on a pro day, catching all 15 passes that are swing passes from your college quarterback. And so it's so hard to make a projection about running backs if they can catch the ball, if they haven't done it. And so that's the only thing that scares me about him as a Bucs fit. Haven't seen enough catch opportunities for Kenneth Walker to make him a fit in Tampa.
Yeah, makes sense. Something to look at for sure. Kenneth says, Scott wrote about interior D-line being weak in the draft. Do we prioritize a defensive tackle with flashes of pass rush or rotational space eater to help keep Vea fresh? Definitely the former, in my opinion, is what the Bucs will do. I think they are looking for flashes of pass rush, athleticism, explosiveness. And if they can't find that till day 3, they'll just take it day 3.
And they're happy with Nacho as that rotational nose tackle. He can go in there, for a couple of snaps and stuff to run.
Yeah, he's a different type of player than Vea, but it still works. I mean, he's a one gap, get up the field, and he is explosive in that. That's never translated to pass rush for him. I mean, just never translated to pass rush for the dude.
I think he's got one career sack or something.
Yeah, it's just he is a complete non-factor as a pass rusher. It is funny.
Yeah.
Vortex asked, if Burks fell to us at 27 and Zion Johnson wasn't there, would you pick him? Is he still your wide receiver 1? This is a great question. He is still my wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Vortex, I have not seen any compelling reason to change that. I would say that overall, though, I am a little bit less confident in Burks based on his testing and then not testing at Arkansas at his pro day. Like, at least take that opportunity, I would think. All it does for me is it raises question marks I'm probably not going to have answers to before the draft. Keeps me from being like totally bullish on him as like take this guy as the first receiver off the board for whoever team drafts the first receiver, like somewhere in the top 10 or 15, wherever that guy comes off the board. It takes me away from saying, wow, like you totally blew it. Like where DK Metcalf, for example, when he fell to 64, I was like, wow, you totally blew it to like the teams in the first round. Like this guy's going to be better than basically everybody you took in the first round, like ahead of this guy. Like I thought it was totally absurd. Now with Burks, like there's enough questions with him where I could be like, okay, like I get it if somebody else takes somebody else first. For me, he's still going to be wide receiver 1. It doesn't mean that he'll be like super high graded for me on my board, though. I see this as a draft with a lot of good like number 2 type receivers, obviously some really good number 3 types, guys that will play and help and contribute and be positive forces for the team. I don't see a lot of guys that are going to be future top 10 receivers
I agree.
in the NFL. And last year's class, I did not. I felt that was a premier group.
It really was. 2 interesting things about Burks. Number 1 is he's visiting Tampa as one of their top 30 visits. You only get 30 guys to bring in your building outside of your local prospects.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
That is.
He's not the only one. Chris Olave is visiting as well, we heard today.
Yes. So let's just get to that news real quick, right? Chris Olave is another player that they interviewed at the Combine, and he is and he's a speedster out of Ohio State. So you like the vertical ability there. With Burks, boy, the fact that this guy can play in the slot, play outside, he can contest, catch the ball, he can get the yards after catch. He's a big physical guy, really unlike anybody they have. I mean, Burks is almost like 1 part Mike Evans and 1 part Chris Godwin. Throw those guys in a blender, and that's Burks. With Olave, this is more of like just a burner type. I mean, he can flat out fly and get vertical, which is what Bruce Arians likes. John, they've got 2 guys at the wide receiver position coming in for a top 30 visit. That's very interesting. And then you throw in the fact that today they were up in North Dakota State looking at another big time wide receiver, Christian Watson from North Dakota State, former Tampa kid. It might be a situation where Bruce Arians and Tom Brady say, you know what, we had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown and Brashard Perriman / Tyler Johnson, and gosh, for the playoffs, we were without Perriman, or we were without Perriman, without Godwin, without AB, of course. They almost
Right.
lost to the Jets because they didn't have Godwin, and AB, flaked down them in the third quarter. So
Yeah.
I think they might need 4 really, really good wide receivers just to shore up the position and safeguard against injury.
It's true. If they had, again, I said this yesterday, and I'm already going to be eating some of my words, I guess. I'm a little bit surprised by today's news. Like, the visits are kind of a big deal. And when you have multiple receivers coming in for visits, it doesn't mean you'll draft those guys, but it clearly means that they are looking at taking a wide receiver at 27. Like, if Olave is on the board, it's going to be at 27, not at 60. Like, so
correct.
And if same thing with Burke, he's not going to be there at 60. And Watson maybe will be there at 60. But again, you're not banking on it necessarily. So you're thinking about him at 27 to 60, like in that range. Like, so all these things show that they are clearly like, and there's an offensive lineman in North Dakota State as well that they could be
Cordell Volson, who I like.
Right. Cordell Volson could definitely be a consideration. So it might not just be Christian Watson, but the fact that you had visited with Christian Watson at the combine, they visited with Chris Olave at the combine. Burks, I don't think he knew yet about his visits, if I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. But and we also know Alec Pierce is another player that's a former.
Yeah. We'll talk about him in a second. He's in our mock. Yeah.
Yes. All 4 of those dudes are clear Bucs fits on the field. Now, there are components to it. They are going to want to know. I would say 3. I'll talk about Olave in a second. Pierce, clearly, like physically, athletically, the way he tested, what he does on tape, being a jump ball guy a lot for Cincinnati. I don't think he plays to his athleticism on tape all the time in terms of speed and quickness that he tested like. Right. But there's no question on tape that he's their type vertical guy, makes plays like that, like big outside guy. That's what they're looking for. They have a couple slot options now. They're determined basically not to like let this vertical group pass them by. All these guys are probably going to go in the first 3 or 4 rounds when you go to Pierce. If you go to those other 3 guys we mentioned, they're probably going to go in the first 2 rounds for sure. Most of them will probably go in the first round. Olave is the most interesting in a lot of ways to me, Scott, because he is obviously a vertical player and a good route runner. He is not as big or physical as Pierce, as Burks, or as Watson. Like, he's not as big or strong or physical as those guys. Watson and Burks were getting the ball as runners. He was not those type of guys. Get a manufactured touches. Olave doesn't do anything after the catch. It's like, again, he's a very defined skill set. He's a good route runner. He's got good hands, and he makes plays down the field.
He's not as fast, but he reminds me a little bit of another Ohio State wide receiver, Joe Galloway. Used to play for the Buccaneers, right? It just he would just straight down the field and catch the ball, and that's
was Galloway bigger or not?
Galloway was 5'10", 195, but similar size.
So he was 195. Okay, what was Olave at the? I forget what he was at the.
I think he was 6 foot, about
6'1" or something like that. Yeah. So it may be a little bit stockier, but Olave's pretty thin frame, not a very big frame, and not a very physical player at all. Yeah. Just a very finesse player. Doesn't mean
Galloway was that way too. He was just a finesse player that just went and got the ball deep and made a living out of it. So,
and maybe that's, Olave, that's enough, to bring him in for a visit. He is a little bit of a different type, but the other guys, on the field, like Burks, because they're not going to care about his 40 time at all. They know he hit 22, almost 23 miles per hour on tape multiple times last year. Like his acceleration, I don't care what he ran the 40. I don't know. Like, but the flying 20, what they call, and the 40, that a lot of GMs look at that more than anything else. That's like, once you've gotten going, from this track stance that you're never going to be in the NFL. Exactly. Once you get going, like that flying 20, like that's where you're going to separate down the field anyway. And your vertical threat as a receiver, that's what a lot of these teams care about. And he flies in that. His acceleration to pull away from people is wild to watch on tape. So there's not going to be any concerns with them to me about his pro day. The only thing I don't know about is the meeting. I talked to Burks in Indy, thought he was fine, thought he was good at the podium, but it wasn't like Zion Johnson and some of these other guys, Lewis Cine. It's like, all right, clearly, like this dude's going to knock their socks off. Now, JTS took a while to warm up too. He's a little bit shy at first.
Correct.
And now you talk to him and you're like, oh, wow, this dude's confident. He's comfortable now. Like he knows the media. Like it's a little bit different.
Vita Vea was incredibly shy too. It's like, he did not win the press conference outside of just his
talked about how much he won them over in their meetings just recently, even like how his personality and just likableness. And so we'll see with Burks and with Olave and some of those other guys, but there's clear interest here. in top wide receivers in the draft, Scott.
I agree.
And that is very interesting because
it is.
there is
It's
not
a
a
bit of a
path to
surprise.
playing time. Like
Yep.
Mike Evans under contract for 2 years and is probably finishing his career as a Buck.
Yeah.
Like
Unless
probably
they
is.
go 4
Godwin is
wide.
3 years.
Unless
Gage
they
is
got
3
Brady
years.
and they
Like,
just said, we're going to go 4 wide. We're going to go 4 verts, and we're just going to do this, John,
they
we've
are
talked
certainly
about
an offense that could do that. There's no doubt about that. They wouldn't go to waste. It'd just be a little surprising with the first round pick to go that direction. But I would not hate it. I'm all about weapons, and I'm all about pass rushes, and I'm all about corners. So any of those positions, I'll never.
And the other thing is, we're all about Celsius, John. That's the thing. And I was a happy camper yesterday because I got 4 cases of Celsius that I ordered right from Amazon, and you can too. And I got these off the Subscribe and Save. You're looking at this flavor right here. It's the Fuji Apple Pear. It's the one front and center right there. I love it. I used to drink apple juice as a kid, and this is a great sparkling flavor. You can see the strawberry guava, the wild berry. They got some new flavors too, like the orange pomegranate, the stevia flavor, which I absolutely love. I had an orange one yesterday, tropical vibe, peach vibe. Folks, the flavor is unreal. And the only thing that's better than the flavor is the fact that there's no sugar in these bad boys. You're talking about no preservatives. When there's no sugar, that means you get all the energy without the crash. This is legit stuff. If you don't believe me, if you don't believe John, if you don't believe other Pewter reporters here that praise Celsius and speak highly of this tasty energy drink, the best on the market, just look in the chat. You can see all of the people that have tried Celsius because of their exposure here on the Pewter Report podcast, and we appreciate that. And I know that Celsius does too. If you want to find out where to get Celsius locally so you can try a can, go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator, type in your address, and they'll pop up. You can also click on the Pewter Report banner ads, the Celsius banner ads over on our home site. And last but not least, go to Amazon. Once you find out the flavors you like, or maybe you want to get the variety pack, do that and have it shipped right to your house. That's the best way to get Celsius because you can save money by buying in bulk and ship it right to your door.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great stuff. Good questions here. Tom Bucs fan. Green Bay is losing wide receiver Marquez Valdez. McKinn's, yes, 3-year, $30 million deal for Marquez Valdez Scantling. This is absurd to me, Scott. Like everything Kansas City's done is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
But this isn't even like they have the cap space and the hardly any receivers left. So whatever. Like with Mahomes, could he be good? Sure. He just played with Aaron Rodgers, Scott, and he's never hit 700 yards receiving in a year. Like people thought, oh, Russell Gage is getting 10 mil per year. Like he had 2 years. He had 202 targets over the last 2 years. Valdez Scantling is barely even out there. He had 430 yards last year, Scott. He had 690 yards the year before that. What are we doing? Like 10 mil a year for this guy who does one thing. If he's on the field, you know exactly what he's going to do. He does one
vertical
thing.
That's it.
That's
vertical
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Russell Gage is so much better than Marcus. Oh, this is again, if you were like, wow, 10 mil's a lot for Gage. Now you see like this guy's at the end of free agency, still going for 10 mil a year.
Well, and the other thing too is the Packers are really tipping their hand now, right? They've lost Devontae Adams, they've lost Marquez Valdez Scantling, so it's pretty obvious they're drafting
Lazard and Randall Cobb. You're not.
Well, no, it's clear they're drafting a running back at number 28, right? I mean, they're just tipping their hand. It's like
this is where Breece Hall comes off the board.
That's right. You've got Aaron Jones, you've got AJ Dillon. They're going to draft Breece Hall.
Imagine Aaron Rodgers after that.
They're going to run the wishbone with Aaron Rodgers because he's no one to throw the ball.
Taking Max Borgi in round 4.
Probably.
He catches a lot of passes, Aaron. We thought maybe he could.
Exactly.
Just absolutely ridiculous.
We're going to draft Rashard White and then come back in day 3 and get Max Borgi, the 2 top pass catching backs in the draft.
They do have a real plight at receiver. It's going to get so interesting as just to wrap up the receiver thoughts on the Bucs right around their pick because let me pull up the draft order real quick so I don't mess this up.
Green Bay picks right after Tampa, and so they're going to draft one of the receivers we're talking about. If the Bucs pass on Olave, he's a Packer. If the Bucs pass on Christian Watson, he's a Packer. It's just that's how.
But it's not just Green Bay, right? Like it's 27 is Tampa Bay, and if you look ahead of them, Tennessee, Buffalo. Dallas maybe, but these teams do not need receivers really. Like they have not really considered. Now the Packers do pick at 22 as well because they have the Raiders pick from the Devontae Adams trade. So there's a receiver that could go there. Then you have the weird situation. Packers pick at 28. Kansas City picks at 29. Kansas City picks at 30. And those are 3 potential receiver spots. So again, if you're the Bucs, you are probably looking at these receivers heavily at 27 because you know
Right.
that you're not going to be able to get, or nor will you be able to trade down. If there's a receiver you like,
Mhm.
it might take trading down off the board. So it's just something to think about. The other thing is that Kansas City and Green Bay, with the picks that they've stockpiled from these trades of Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, would they try to jump up?
Right.
Would Kansas City try to jump up? New England's always looking to trade back. Would they try to jump up to 21 and get ahead of Green Bay for one of these receivers? Because there's
Yeah.
no going to a season with Mahomes and Rodgers in the receiver rooms that these teams have.
Yeah.
It's quite laughable right now.
Yep. No, it really is, and and the thing is too, there's a lot of receivers in this draft, but like you said, John, a lot of number 2 and number 3 receivers, not a lot of
Yeah.
guys that are going to come in and press for 1,000 yards as a rookie,
Yeah.
Um,
Especially late in the first round. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a couple of these guys are going to be off the board probably. So
Exactly.
Kansas City's fascinating, by the way, Scott, because
Yeah.
MVS, they have Juju Smith-Schuster they already signed. Mecole
Mhm.
Hardman's there. I imagine you want him to play a role.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce. So like you have guys. I don't think any of those receivers are good, but
Right.
one of those, if you draft somebody high, one of those guys is probably getting benched. So
Yes.
like, are you going to bench one of your 2 guys that you just signed? I don't
Yeah.
think.
That's a
You're
good
going to
point.
bench Hardman, your only holdover. I don't know.
That's
It's
a good point.
they might not take one as early as Chiefs fans think, and there's going to be riots in those streets. And
Oh,
I'm
yes.
here for it.
No doubt about it. Jordan Schneiderman with a $5 super chat. Feels like we still need one more pass rusher in the rotation. If you could each pick a free agent pass rusher to add to the roster, who would it be and why? Well, I would pick Justin Houston because this guy can
I
get
thought you
to
were going
the
to say
quarterback.
Jason Pierre-Paul.
No, no, no. Justin Houston, that's what he does. He just gets the quarterback, Um, that's
He
my guy.
gets sacks literally just every year.
DPR.
Like, it doesn't matter how old he is.
Pass rusher. Just put him in there, third downs, let him get after the quarterback. He knows how to do it.
Right. Let me think about this for a second. I'm gonna pull up the rankings so I answer this. I'm totally on board with Houston, by the way. Professional. He's been in a rotational role for years now. He's not gonna get bent out of shape about it.
Yeah.
I don't know his character. Like he was doing well in Pittsburgh and then just won it out. I don't know what. I'm not holding that against him because I'm a Steeler guy. Like I'm just saying that might be like a red flag to the Bucs, but like Melvin Ingram would be a friggin' blast in Todd Bowles' defense. I actually feel like we've been sort of robbed as football fans. I mean, he's the ultimate twist in games guy, the ultimate blitz guy. He can drop and do some things, but also like he can rush from any alignment. He stands up, he puts his hand down. He has the nastiest spin move in the NFL. Like he's just kind of one of those players that wreaks havoc all over a front, and he's so big that you can literally put him inside and it can be fine. So he would be probably my choice just because he's more versatile than Houston. But I like Houston too. He's more of a true edge Houston, but I like him as well.
Yeah. The thing is John Abraham was a player that went from Atlanta to the Cardinals back in 2013, Bruce's first season. So, I wouldn't rule out if the Buccaneers swing and don't have an opportunity to draft an outside guy and they still need another guy. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys we mentioned, John, ends up signing after the draft or over the summer to Tampa Bay, because that's one thing Bruce will do is he'll go out there and get a guy kind of off the street. In 2013, John Abraham actually led the Cardinals in sacks with 11.5. Right. So at the end of his rope, Atlanta, kicked him out the door, and he had more sacks than Carlos Dansby and Darnell Dockett that year.
He was no doubt about it, a pass rusher. Jets still have not found one as good as him. Colin O'Connell says, how would you feel about Daxton Hill versus Cine, more of a nickel type? Tim, I'm just not that worried about the nickel now because of Ryan. Now, if they choose not to play him there and he's just sitting on the roster all year and they don't play him in the nickel and they're getting killed at the nickel, I'm just going to be like, that's on the coaches because they had an answer, So right now, I'm not really concerned about drafting a player like that. Now, Daxton Hill is interesting because he's not, we've talked this a little bit. Jalen Petrie from Baylor played just nickel basically. Hill played a little bit safety, still mostly in the slot, but it's going to be interesting to see how teams see him, in terms of where they want him in the NFL.
Yeah, and the thing is Hill is more of like a nickel corner than he is even a safety. The Bucs do view him as a safety, though I kind of found that out. But looking at our second round mock draft, you got to remember too, it may not seem like there's a need at cornerback because you just re-signed Carlton Davis. If you're Tampa Bay, you've got Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting in contract years. But because they're in a contract year and you can't afford to keep all three of them, especially if one of them blows up, maybe it's Jamel Dean. But you got to go back to last year, right? I mean, D. Delaney started a pair of games. Pierre Desir started a couple games. Richard Sherman started a couple games. The cornerback position was decimated. CD missed 7 games. SMB missed 8. Jamel Dean missed 2 starts and was a quick exit in 2 other games, the Rams game and the Colts game due to injury. So one of the players we have them drafting in the second round, it might be a touch high, but this is a player that's really interesting. This is Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State. He's a big, tall drink of water, 6'2", 199, a bigger cornerback like Todd Bowles likes. He blazed a fast time and sub 4.4 in the 40-yard dash. And if you're going to be drafted high as a FCS player, right, as a lesser division player, you really got to dominate that level. And this is a guy that did. He played 5 years at Sam Houston State, and in 4 of those 5 seasons, he had 3 interceptions. So if you add them all up, he had 13 interceptions. He had 1 year where he had one pick. But this is a ball hawk. This is a player that didn't really show out at the Senior Bowl, but he did show up at the Senior Bowl. And what I mean by that is some of these smaller school players, John, they could go to the NFLPA Bowl or the East-West Shrine Bowl. Those are some lesser bowls for guys that are typically going to be day 3 players or even undrafted players. But the Senior Bowl thought enough of him to get him up at that level. And I don't think that he embarrassed himself. I don't think he made a name for himself, but he proved he belonged. And this is a player that is a developmental corner, right? He's not going to come in and necessarily start right away. Although if he does, it's an indictment on SMB or Jamel Dean. But the Bucs like size a corner, and they probably need to invest in a corner, not just in case injuries strike again, but maybe as a guy that they have in a hopper in case Jamel Dean doesn't get re-signed, or maybe Sean Murphy-Bunting.
No question. This was interesting to me, this pick. I don't know much about him. I need to watch more of his game. Obviously, corner's weird for the Bucs. Like, they could take one in the first round, Scott. They could draft Kaiir Elam, who might be our Bucs' best bet in the first round at corner for Tampa Bay. And I wouldn't be surprised. Or they could not draft a corner at all, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I have no idea how they view one of the big mysteries of covering the Bucs the last couple of years is how they view Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting. Like, we just don't have a great grasp of that. Part of it is Dean has played better, and it still felt like they maybe wanted to play Murphy-Bunting over him at times. And Dean was also, even though he was clearly better than Murphy-Bunting has ever been last year, and he sustained it for longer than Dean's ever sustained it, he just had a hard time staying on the field consistently. But Murphy-Bunting also got hurt. This year was the year. Last year we were sure Murphy-Bunting was trash. Then he played in the playoffs and he was good, good enough. And then last season he gets hurt and misses most of the year. Then he's not really good when he returns. No turnovers, if I'm recalling correctly. Like, he just was a non-factor as a player. He did not look like a second contract guy. He really has not really looked like a second contract guy at any point in Tampa Bay, but they keep playing him. They talk about how much they love him and just have no idea. So again, they could take one in the first round or not at all. And I wouldn't be surprised, because I don't know what they think about those guys.
I know. Exactly. Back to some questions, John. We have a $5 super chat from Leo. Do you think they brought in Mason and Ryan to help Brady set up to teach the Patriots?
I do not think this, Leo, but that is hilarious. Just because we laugh because just people say Patriots culture so much. Like, Bucs have their own culture. It is so different than New England's culture. And I think that's why players love it and want to come there. And it's such a popular destination. I think they brought in Shaq Mason because the Patriots are one of the crazy teams that you always check to see if they'll trade one of their guys, because they or draft resources, even though they hate most prospects, and they'll use them to get, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense. They're not a very good drafting team. They just went all out in free agency last year, and we're 9-7 or 10-7.
It seems like Bill Belichick he kind of senses a player is about to be on the downswing. The player's not there yet, but he likes to get rid of guys
in 2 years
early. He does.
For sure. And he won't pay to keep guys in their prime, like J.C. Jackson at premium positions. So maybe he ends up being right. We'll see. I think he made the right call with Gilmore. I didn't have any. The way it was handled maybe wasn't great, but the call was fine. But yeah, I do think that's why. And Logan Ryan was a couple years ago. I think they wanted to bring him in because of the versatility again with Bulls. Correct. He's pretty much always done that with safety. So yeah, I think those are the main reasons. Somebody asked about UConn. John asked about UConn defensive tackle Travis Jones in the draft. Scott, you and I maybe see this one a little bit differently. I don't necessarily see him as the worst fit for the Bucs, but I don't think they'll take him at 27. If he's there at 60, maybe, but I don't think they'll take him at 27. You think there's a little bit better chance maybe that they could take him?
I think so because there's really 4 defensive tackles in this draft that have identified that might be Bucs fits. And well, actually, I'm going to say 3 because I don't think Jordan Davis is actually a Bucs fit. I think if Jordan Davis is there at 27, believe it or not, I think Tampa Bay would pass on him just because he doesn't offer any value on third down. He's not a pass rusher. As Warren Sapp told me, the kid may test 4.7, but he played like 5.2 on Saturdays. And I agree. I watched a lot of Georgia, and I've maintained all along, John, I thought Jalen Carter was the best defensive tackle at Georgia. He was a sophomore. He's coming back for his junior year. He's not eligible for the draft. I thought Devontae Wyatt was right there too. And then I thought Jordan Davis was the 3rd best defensive tackle. So I don't think that's the case. So it's Devontae Wyatt and it's Travis Jones. And Jones, to me, is not the quick twitch guy that Bruce Arians wants or that he's talking about. But he is athletic enough. He's in the Ndamukong Suh mold. And so I think that they may have to settle this year. And if they do, they might be resigned to the fact that Travis Jones, who ran a 4.92 at 325 pounds, is enough of a talent. You could stick him there, and he's going to be a good player. Is he going to be a Pro Bowler? I don't know, but I think he could be a quality starter in this system because they do rely so much on those defensive tackles to stop the run.
Yeah, and he might be our early Bucs best bet too. We'll have to see how that unfolds.
Yep. Well,
Harvinder says,
yep.
What's that?
I was going to just say that this might be the time just to quickly move on to the other defensive tackle that they do like, who we actually had the Bucs drafting.
Yes, talk about him, and then we'll answer Harvinder's question.
Yeah,
well, let me just answer Harvinder's question. How many
sure.
Tampa's draft picks from last year actually worked out and gave something to the team on the field? Well, Hainsey and Trask were behind 2 All-Pros, so they weren't going to play.
Right.
And then JTS played well, which in his role. And then Darden, I would say, is the one that return guy was brought in to be return guy. Didn't
led the team in special teams.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that? Britt and Stewart were both great at special teamers. Yeah, they're both really good. Stewart looks like he will be literally a Pro Bowl special teamer. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Like, he is probably one of the better special teamers in Tampa Bay in the last 10 years. Like, he's that good.
No doubt about it.
Like, even when he didn't get tackles, he's constantly down there off blocks, forcing the issue. He looks like he's the last pick in the draft. If you can get one of the best special teamers in the league as the last pick in the draft, it's a heck of a pick.
Yeah,
so
Bucs Bucs have 2 Mr. Irrelevance on their team. Ryan Suckup, the kicker, was one, and also Grant Stewart. So let's go back to the defensive tackle position, because the other guy that we've identified as a potential Bucs fit is this big guy right here, Eyoma Uwazurike from Iowa State. And as a Big 12 guy, I watched him play a lot, and I really didn't notice him at all until this past year. Why is that? Well, because he had 9 sacks this year. He was a first-team all Big 12 pass rusher, and he was really a late bloomer. He played 5 years at Iowa State, so he's like a little bit older. He's 24. But this is a player that at 6'6", 313 pounds, gives the Buccaneers the size, the length, the beef that they want to be able to stuff the run. He has got a relentless motor. He got better every year, and he really was the best player, I thought, on Iowa State's defense. They regressed a little bit as a team, but he really stepped up as a pass rusher this year and proved he was more than just a defensive tackle. He's a big physical guy, works hard, and really the thing that I like about him is in their 3-4 scheme, John, he played all 3 positions. He was all over that defensive line. Sometimes they would even use him as an edge rusher like Todd Bowles will do on occasion with Vita Vea, right, just to give a tackle a different look. But he was that 5-tech defensive end like Will Golston. He played 3-tech like Ndamukong Suh. He played nose tackle like Vita Vea. So you get a big athletic guy like this in the 3rd round, and you have a player that might be the heir apparent to Will Golston, or he might be the heir apparent to Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting player for sure, and I can't wait to finish his tape evaluation. But I mean, 6'6", 316 is not a frame you find very often inside. It harkens you to like Buckner and Campbell, and those guys can play because they're elite players at that height. But there are not a lot of guys at that height that do well inside. And you know what, John? They have elite skill sets.
You're right, and I think this guy's floor is Will Golston. right? Who is 6'6", 310 pounds, similarly sized, but this guy's a little twitchier, a little bit more athletic. I don't know if he's as strong because Will is the Hulk. I mean, Will Golston
his frame is incredible. Like
is
he's
the
not
most
on a bad
impressive
weight.
Buccaneer. Like he just is, and he has been for a long time physically.
Yeah.
And so if that's his floor, and you're drafting him as a late third round pick, Will Golston's been a starter for 10 years and was a fourth round pick. I mean, that's not a bad trade off right there, late in the third round.
316 pounds and you vertical jump 33 inches. That is not common, man. That is not common at all. So it's going to be an interesting player. There's always like to check Lance Zierlein scouting reports over at NFL.com to see what, because he often will have a quote from a scout or something like that. And it's really the only access we get to a lot of the personalities of most of these players other than the combine. And he says from a scouting director for an AFC team, their coaches, Iowa State's coaches, rave about the way he's overcome personal adversity and become more mature. So just kind of something cool. Like we're always talking about Bucs draft somebody. It's almost always they're trying to be either neutral personality or positive personality for the locker room. And so it seems like that's a good sign that he could be a potential fit.
Well, and John, after 3 first rounds, or I should say 3 defensive picks, right? We've already talked about him, so we're not going to, but Alec Pierce from Cincinnati, Desmond Ritter's top target the last couple of years. He is the 4th round pick. So we'll kind of move on and answer some more questions. But just getting to that 4th round pick, we have Alec Pierce. We've talked about him being that vertical contested catch guy that if the Buccaneers
body could be a big slot too. Could have some flexibility to move around and play different spots, which they're always looking for, obviously. Long Lost Glazer says number 27, Travis Jones or DeMarvin Leal. Yeah, this one's Leal is not a Buck. It's just, again, not even just to saying he's bad or he's soft or anything like that. Just don't get the impression watching him on tape. Never have. Even when I thought, oh, he's intriguing, I never had him up there for the Bucs. I would be shocked if they picked him.
Yes, I would be shocked if they took him. I'd be shocked if they took Perion Winfrey. I'd be shocked if they took George Karlaftis in the first round. Those are some names that we've, that we probably know that they're not going to take.
Probably not going to be. Hint. No, I think you're right. Those are names. And I would not expect, Winfrey a little bit surprised. It seems like the reviews on him are very mixed. Like if you read Bob McGinn stuff, there's some guys that are like, he's all talk. But when you put on the tape, he's not very good, but he plays very hard. Like very much bull in a China shop, very linear, nonstop movement, often movement without a purpose, but he's very high effort, very physical, big dude, but and he played well at the Senior Bowl, but the tape it doesn't.
I didn't think about this. Kenneth Posner with a great comment here. Uzurike practicing versus Wirfs, Iowa State versus Iowa, bloody drills. Yes, the Cy-Hawk trophy is real. I mean, as much as you think Florida State, or in my neck of the woods, when you got K-State versus KU. Of course, that's not really a rivalry anymore.
Right.
We spank them tremendously in football every year. But Iowa State, that's a real legit Midwestern rivalry there, because one team is Iowa State in the Big 12. You've got Iowa in the Big 10. That's a war. That would be a fun training camp battle to watch, John. Uzurike versus Wirfs.
Oh, it would be, no question about it. There'd be some battles there. I Like Rice says, are there any off-ball linebackers out there this year? Someone capable of doing Devin White and Levante's style of play? I love White, but I feel like he's going to piss us off again. He is, but he's also getting the fifth-year option we've already reported is going to get picked up for him. So it doesn't really matter. Like he's going to be around. So he's going to be in one spot long-term, whether y'all like it or not, whether we like it or not. Now, David, contract year, he's the kind of player that if he wanted to keep playing next year, there's not many free agents. Well, Tom Brady could be, we'll see. But, there's not a ton of them free agents, especially compared to this year. So, like, he's probably a guy that you could add another year. He's going to want to finish his career in Tampa probably. Correct. And so, you want to keep playing a year? We'll add a year.
And the Blazers are going to make sure that happens, right? I mean, he's one of those guys. He's a franchise player. So, they're going to make not the franchise tag, but a franchise player. So
now, will they take a linebacker, Scott? I don't have any idea. This is like corner to me. Like I don't know, but
it's
a good linebacker class.
It is. The lip service we've heard is they're high on KJ Britt. I think higher than you and I are, John, based on what we've seen, right? So I don't
Well,
know
even
that.
if you're high on him, he's clearly not a weak side backer. You wouldn't ask him to do things David did.
Yeah,
So would you switch Devin White? Would you move him and play Britt at Mike?
I don't know.
That's
I don't know that KJ Britt is in Devin White's class athletically, right? I mean, he's a 5th round
oh
pick.
my
So
gosh, not even close. No.
yeah. So
But like if you're gonna ask, like Britt can't do the things David does in coverage, like from a
correct.
weak side backer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
obviously
all
maybe
in
moving
favor,
around, but
and I almost put Troy Anderson from Montana State in the 2nd round.
you like him.
Buccaneers. I
We
like him.
like some linebackers. We just don't know who the Bucs like at linebacker yet.
Yeah,
We're zeroing in on it for a couple other
correct.
positions,
Yep.
wide out and D tackle and edge
Yep.
rusher. We're getting a good safety. We're getting a good vibes
Yep.
but there's a couple that we don't know. We know their type at corner.
Yeah.
We don't really have a great read on the linebacker situation.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a feel on some guys, and
Okay.
you'll find out in the Bucks' best bets because we'll have a couple of guys for sure. The
Have
other
we
thing,
had a linebacker in any of our 3 7-round mock drafts? Maybe
I,
late.
I think in the first one we had a guy in the 7th round. I think we might have had the Arizona State kid or the Baylor kid. One of those two guys.
Okay.
They're Bucks fits, but we might put a linebacker in there on day 3 in one of these
They
drafts.
need more picks. They might trade down.
They do.
It's hard right now because we're trying to do this. The roster's not complete, and
Right.
they'd love to take a linebacker, I'm sure, and plan for the future. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this year.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I'll say too to I like Rice is keep in mind there was a big coaching change, right? You have the new outside linebackers coach, whose name escapes me.
Me too. Wait, well, new outside linebackers.
Bob Sanders. Thank you. Yes, it
yes,
just came into my mind. Bob Sanders is the new outside linebackers coach, and what they did was
not the safety Bob Sanders.
not the safety Bob Sanders. Yes, so that they took and his name is escaping me too. I'm having an old man moment here again. The outside linebackers coach,
Larry Foote.
Larry Foote. Thank you. Gosh, Larry Foote. Larry Foote moved inside. It's been a long week, folks. I've written a lot. That mock draft about killed me the last 2 days, and I'm working on a Fab 5 right now. So Larry Foote is inside now. He's the inside linebackers coach. It's a position he played in the NFL, in Pittsburgh, among other places. And I just think a different voice for Devin White, a different perspective, not knocking Mike Caldwell at all. I think he's a good coach, but maybe having Larry Foote and his foot up Devin's ass is going to be a good thing because Larry Foote will bring the heat. He will bring the energy. He's a high energy guy, whereas Mike Caldwell is a low energy guy. Think of Mike Caldwell as Tony Dungy and Larry Foote as Mike Tomlin or Herm Edwards, right? It just, the volume goes up. And maybe that resonates with Devin a little bit better.
Maybe. Yeah. That'd be totally interesting to see. I really am totally curious to see how that goes. Maybe having a bigger personality in there pushes him more than somebody who's more chill like Caldwell. I really have no idea. Couple more as we close out. Josh says, who on the roster could you see Tampa Bay move for more picks, if any player? Do you think the team's happy with everyone? I don't think there's many players. Maybe a Scotty or Tyler Johnson, maybe during the draft, or those guys could potentially get moved. But you're talking about late 6th-round picks. That's what they're going to get moved for. Players like Scotty do tend to be valuable to other teams, like teams that are just look at. I mean, Scotty's better than Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he just got 10 million a year. So, I mean, teams aren't going to see him as better because he's smaller. But right. But he could get moved. The Bucs just wouldn't. I don't know if they draft one early, they could move him on day 2 or 3. What's the role for him? If they draft a vertical threat in round 1, if they draft a Lavi or Burks, or what are they going to do with Scotty Miller? Like, trade him, get a 6th-round pick for him. You don't have a 6, get a 6. So those guys, it also made me go back to Ronald Jones. They just should have traded him last year. I mean, I don't know if there would have been a market. It would have been a late pick, but it's another pick, man. Like in Ronald Jones, even if you lost running backs, he wasn't helping you because he can't play in every down. Like you got to a point where you still rather play Keyshawn Ball. Like you still rather play Le'Veon Bell because they could pass protect and catch, and Jones can't. So should have traded him.
Speaking of backs that can catch, John, as we round out our mock draft, let's get to the 7th round because the Bucs do not have a 5th-round pick. They traded that for Shaq Mason. They didn't have a 6th-round pick due to a future or a past trade, I should say. So going into the 7th round, Max Borky from Washington State is a very interesting prospect. Why? Because this guy, not only does he look like Christian McCaffrey, he was called like little Christian McCaffrey out there at Washington State. And it's a situation where this guy can catch the ball like no other. What I mean by that? Well, if you look back at his freshman season at Washington State, he burst on the scene with 366 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's a little guy. He's going to remind Tom Brady of Rex Burkhead, because I think that's the comp here. But 8 touchdowns on the ground. He's really good against defenses in goal line situations. He just finds the opening. He's got enough power that he can use those little legs, his 5'9", to get in the end zone. But he had 53 catches for 374 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's as a freshman in 2018. Now, the next year, he had a more prominent role, 817 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns. But, John, he had 86 catches for 597 yards and 5 touchdowns. One running back. I mean, that's a career for a running back. In his second season, he had 86 receptions for almost 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. So this is a player that the Buccaneers did meet with at the Combine, and I think could be a really good day 3 pick. Think poor man's Christian McCaffrey. Think Rex Burkhead. This is a player that has got some wiggle to his game. He's more quick than fast, but he can run the route tree. He can do the angle routes. He can do the wheel routes. This is not just a swing pass, screen pass kind of guy.
Yeah, it's true. He's another guy at the podium. You just thought, all right, I can see it. Yeah, just very confident. He's already accepted a role that he didn't like for his entire, I shouldn't say didn't like, but I mean, obviously you play running back at Washington State, especially for the years he spent with Leach. Like, you're not going to love every second. Like, you're basically a wideout, and
you would never rush for 1,000 yards.
Yeah, you just never rush. So he feels confident in his skill set despite that. He's used to being in a scheme that doesn't necessarily run heavy, and he'd be an asset later in the draft. And I think he could be a special teamer as well.
He might be a 6th round pick. The Bucs, he might not be there in the 7th. We'll see. But we're just doing some projections here. Rounding out the draft is in the 7th round with their compensatory pick. Another player that might not be there. He might go earlier. He might go in the 6th round, but he's definitely a late day 3 guy. And that's Austin Allen, the big tight end from Nebraska. The Bucs need another tight end. It might be re-signing Gronk. I think Gronk's going to come back. That's what the organization believes. They've got Cam Brate, who is back for another year, John, but he's 31. He's on the downside of his career. You have Cody McElroy, a practice squad player. They need another tight end to get in there and replace O.J. Howard. And the thing with Austin Allen that I liked is in a conference in the Big Ten that had Ohio State's Jeremy Ruckert and Wisconsin's Jake Ferguson, 2 players that will be drafted before Austin Allen. It was Austin Allen who was the Big Ten tight end of the year and the first team all Big Ten tight end. And the reason for that is because of the production that he had. He was kind of a late bloomer. That's why he's maybe not on a lot of teams' radars for the draft. He had 2 catches as a freshman, 7 catches as a sophomore, 18 catches and 1 touchdown. As a junior, then exploded on the scene, 38 catches for 602 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, a late bloomer. But what's going to catch the Bucs' eye, John, 15.8 yard average. He's not a very fast guy, but he's just a big guy. He's 6'8", 253 pounds. Yeah. So he's a mismatch. That's what Bruce Arians talked about at the tight end position is we like those guys that can create mismatches. He gets open by simply putting up his hands. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all he has to do. He's huge.
Block specialist guy.
He is. He's a very good blocker. Despite the long legs, he's a knee bender. He can get good leverage.
I meant a field goal blocks. Like,
he can do that too. Yeah, put him out there with Will Golston, and they'll block some kicks, man.
Right. This is interesting. The whole tight end thing is fascinating to the Bucs. I don't know, who they're going to take yet. Cade Otton from Washington. They've had what's that? Not a big fan, but they've had some interest with him. I believe they had a formal with him. And then I think they also have a top 30 visit coming up with him as well. So this is Justin Mello,
Colorado State kid too.
Reported that. Yeah. And Trevor McBride. I mean, there's been interest there, but for Cade, it seems like they are very definitely intrigued by him. 6'5", 247,
bigger guy. Yeah.
He is Lance Zierlein's number 1 tight end in this draft. Not a lot of people have talked about him. It's probably the quietest tight. I mean, there's people have talked about McBride, and after that, it's just barely
right.
There's just a bunch of guys, and they're all pretty much the same. And draft who you want, and I've got to get into the tape and really dig out who I think are the top guys. I'm probably going to start that process tonight with some of them. But yeah, I don't know how physical he is, and that just makes me really wonder about him as a Bucs fit. But that's bring him in for a formal. So again, the quotes are from
also a team captain. I mean, very well respected at Nebraska too.
Right.
So.
A quote from a scouting director for an NFC team to Zierlein was, "I think he is the best I've seen so far in 2021 at just getting himself open with his routes. That is a really big deal for me when I watch tight ends," he said. So
yeah.
Lance has his thoughts in there. I usually don't read those until after I've finished my evaluation of the player because I don't want it to. But yeah, that's something to think about. Tight end is going to be a factor. And by the way, just so everybody's on the same page, Rick Stroud just tweeted, Rob Gronkowski is still undecided whether to play in 2022, according to agent Drew Rosenhaus. I talked to Tampa yesterday, and I told them that he's still undecided. He needs some time to figure out whether he wants to play. And he also said, Rosenhaus said Tom Brady's decision to end his retirement could obviously influence Gronkowski's decision. The Bucs have offered the opportunity for Rob to come back. Rosenhaus said, I think he's honestly undecided.
Here's what he's undecided about is right here.
I think he's really undecided. I think he's probably going to play.
I think he wants the
money. I don't
money.
think he's ready to say that yet. How much more is he going to get? He's not going to get that much more at this.
He had a better year.
I know, but
this past year than he did in.
He's old and he missed 2020.
Time. I know, but that's the thing. Despite
he's not going to go play
games,
where else. What did he have last year? Was it 8
games?
Did he play for 8 and incentives to 10? Is that right?
I believe so. I think that was the case. Yeah.
I bet it's the same deal. I
think at the end it will be. Yeah, but I just it's all about money. That's what when Rosenhaus is making that statement, he's the agent. He's doing this.
He was asked it at Tyreek Hill's press conference. To be fair, it wasn't like he released it. I should be clear about that. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yeah, we'll see. But I think we got to a lot of the questions anyway. We got to wrap the show up for sure. But great questions from everybody. Yeah, there's always a million, and so we appreciate that. We try and do these Q&As and get through as many of them as we can. Geez, I'm
thumbs up or thumbs down for the mock. What'd y'all think? We have another
thumbs
one coming
up or thumbs
out.
down for the mock.
Yeah, we have another mock coming out in about 10 days. It's a quick turnaround. Then then our final mock will be before the week of the draft. So it'll be a couple of days before the draft.
Yeah. So getting close. I'm gonna be grinding. I'm gonna be grinding tape like every night. It's gonna be coming on this show, like just spilling out stuff about prospects because I'll be cramming like crazy because I've had to do so much free agency work. But no, this is great. We appreciate everybody jumping in here. It's been a great week on the show. We'll keep you
New Fab 5 tomorrow.
New Fab 5 tomorrow. Yes, more content coming out tomorrow. More content coming up on the site tonight, actually, because I've been late to get up some of it. So you'll see some articles pop up there tonight. So go over to pewterreport.com, check it out. Give us a like, the thumbs up on the video if you could before you head out. Subscribe to Pewter Report TV YouTube channel if you could. We'd love that as well. Until Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you all. We love you all. Thanks so much for listening to another great edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.